Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome to Nom Watch Review, part of Nom Talk Network. On this show, as you already know, if you haven't watched before, we review the latest film drop or throwback celebrating a milestone while eating and drinking our favorite movie snacks and drinks. So I'm your host, Jordyn Orozco, and right now I'm enjoying a wonderful Icelandic white pale ale and a wonderful microwavable bean and cheese burrito. It's really lovely and amazing. And I would like to say hello and hi to my guests tonight. It's so good to see you again, Kurt. Alex, I've known you outside of here, but it's so good to do one of these with you. So it's
Yeah,
awesome to
long
see
time,
you.
right? About time.
I know it's crazy. What are you eating and drinking tonight?
I am having some delicious Italian wedding soup here. I don't want to drop it on my lap there, so yummy. I need some sugar because I'm a sugar lover and I love some OJ. And then I gotta keep myself some hydrated with some water here, so I'm ready.
Yeah, or mix
Yeah,
the two, or mix the two, and then there it
exactly
is.
right. Dilute it a little bit.
And Kurt, man, what's going on? It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Yeah, I'm living the good life today. I got my diet soda, and I just finished some Mexican rice pudding from the dollar
Ooh,
store. I'm ready to go.
was
Jealous.
was was that a Bulbasaur cup?
Yeah, well,
What?
it's the starters,
Oh,
Yes.
the,
nice.
the mid evolution, so the less common. But yeah,
That
Charmeleon.
wasn't Bulbasaur. That was Ivysaur or
yeah,
Venus. That's Ivysaur. Got it. See, I just big
yeah,
Pokemon fan. Whatever. It also fits the theme, right? I mean, it kind
I
of
know,
fits
right?
the
yeah,
what's going on.
yeah.
And so it's good to see you too. And then if you haven't already guessed by the lovely things that are sitting on my back, we are talking about Fern Gully, the Last Rainforest, which is literally one of my favorite animated films, at least for me, of all time. I used to sit and watch this movie in the 90s. My dad, we had the VHS, we had all that, and we used to just sit and watch it, would rewind it, watch it again, and it just became a staple in my house. And I was funny, I mentioned it to my dad tonight, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like you were kind of obsessed with that movie." So, and ironically, it's celebrating its 30th anniversary this year.
Whew.
30 years. That makes me feel old. Like I was 4 when this came out. Like it's insane at how amazing this film is. And I feel like, we'll go into more detail about all of that, anything, what was going on. What were your all thoughts on, before you watched this, what did you hear? Like, did you see it before, you had to do it for this show? What was going on? Kurt, what do you think?
Well, I saw it when I was a kid, not that young of a kid. What I would have been 8, I guess, when the movie came out. So I saw it in theaters with my mom when I was
Oh my gosh, that's
a kid.
crazy.
So when I was a kid, I loved it, but as an adult, when I rewatched it for this, it does not hold up in my eyes. But we'll talk about that. But I'm an environmental scientist. I'm an environmental planner. My background's in wildlife biology, so I'm always pro like environmentalist movies, pro science stuff. But this movie does not hold up.
Yeah, and we are going to get into the debate on is Avatar really a James Cameron version of Fern Gully. So we will not skip that because I am a diehard. Yeah. Anyway, Alex, what about you? Have you seen this before you had to watch it for this? What were you thinking?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Actually, it's been a mixture of things. I did see it afterwards, not in theaters. I was like, ooh, man, 5 or 6. But honestly, um, the one thing that attracted me about this movie was the fact that at the time being, I didn't relate it to Disney. It was something that
Yeah,
was not
yeah,
Disney, and I was thrown
yes.
off because I was used to the Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, and so forth as well. And I think, if I'm correct, I was watching TBS, and this movie came on, and I was like, "What is this? Bright colors? You got these
Mhm.
creatures coming out." So I was at first, without going too much of it, so I won't spoil the questions we're about to get to. But like, I was very surprised. I had no association in regards to movie trailers or anything. It was very very blind watch. Go to see it. So when I initially saw this, I was hyped about it. A little scared because of epic Tim Curry's character.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I was a little really excited when I saw it. Surprised, but definitely excited.
Sure. I definitely feel too. I think I feel you, Kurt. Like I think watching it now, I was like, there's some cringe like things that I wouldn't necessarily think that they could get away with in 2022 that they got away in 92. I definitely feel like it was a product of its time because this was around the time when 20th Century was coming out with all of these like animated musical films that were utter genius, at least for me in the 90s. Like Thumbelina, excuse me, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
uh Anastasia, come on. Like some of the like the most awesome, at least in my opinion, the most awesome animated features, and they weren't Disney, which was strange. Oh, the other one too was Quest for Camelot. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yes.
You
And
know.
it was like,
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, no, no. Go ahead, go ahead.
Oh no, no. All I was gonna say was, producer Steph handed me some of the comments here, and she was, everybody seems to be on the same level we are in regards to this here. So, for example, we got Q in the house here. Q, always good to see you, buddy. Celestial after came in, and she mentioned that coming in the fact that Q loves your wings. By the way, Jordyn.
Oh,
Let's see
thank
here.
you.
Celeste mentioned the fact that she would rate this also a 5 out of 5, and just a lot of positivity in the chat room comments in regards to same thing in the
Sure.
introduction, the film, the surprise, how it was, and so forth. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you initially.
Yeah, no, I was saying like it was very, I think a lot of them, except for Thumbelina and Anastasia, like Quest for Camelot, and then this similarly, it almost followed the same vein as far as the story goes, because you get sort of like this modern music, right? Where
Yeah.
it's not necessarily tailored to the film, but it works out because of what was going on in the film. So, for example, you get like, uh, gosh, I forget it, but it's the na 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 na.
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
that in
Yeah.
there, but it's because Zach has a cassette tape, right? And so he's
Exactly.
listening to
Yeah.
all of this. But then you also get the love ballad, right? When they're down in the grotto and down in the cave, where it was like these were songs that were specifically made for these movies. And like in Quest for Camelot, you get Celine Dion doing that whole bit, and that whole love ballad when that happened. And so I feel like this movie was definitely a product of its time. I'm definitely interested to hear, Kurt, your perspective, because like you are going to have such a unique perspective on it. This scared the shit out of me. I was like with Alex, like when I was a kid, because I was like, I'm never ever littering again. I'm not using paper at all. I gotta love trees. I gotta do all this stuff. And I honestly believe that there were fairies. Like I really did. Like it was one of those films, right, where I was just like, I want to protect them, I want to do all that stuff. But let's just get into it. Let's start with the nitty gritty. So here on Nom Watch Review, we like to rate things in popcorn buckets. And one is like, it was the shittiest fucking film I've ever seen, or zero, right? Zero, shittiest fucking film I've ever seen. And five is like, this was the greatest movie of all time. We need to promote this. We need to remake it 1,000 times. That's what it is, right? Let's start with you, Kurt. What did you give this? What did you give this rating? This film?
Uh, I gotta break my childhood heart and say 2 out of 5. To me, it does not hold up. It's not terrible. There's a lot of talent behind the art and the voice
Sure.
acting. It's just when I really, as a guy who likes to break down this stuff and think about the story and the mixed messaging, and it just does not hold up in my mind.
Awesome. And then we'll get into that. Alex, what would you say?
Um, I am a little similar to Kurt, but my initial rating is going to be higher, sort of 4 out of 5. However, I would like to see when we get further in this if it's going to go up or down. So I'm really curious.
Sure. I guess it'll be me trying to convince you that it's a 5, and then Kurt trying to convince you that it's a 2.
Oh,
So
like
if
the
you
fact
haven't already,
that.
so I'm definitely a 5 out of 5. And normally, like, so I think this movie specifically for this specific purpose is its own caliber. Like, I wouldn't put this with like the Batman or like the other movies that we've done reviews on. I think for what it was, for the time that it came out, versus now where I'm like, it actually it was a major impact, at least in my life. I was like, this is what 20th Century was putting out, while Disney was also putting out some like feature films that were making multiple millions of dollars. I'm like, they did good. So you know what? I'm gonna do 5 out of 5. I think it was really good. But let's start talking about this. So some of this cast is star-studded, right? Like, I mean, and to be fair, like this isn't Disney, right? Like this is like, well, now 20th Century Fox, right? It's like
Yeah.
these people were like something else. So we have Samantha Mathis, who's Krista, the main character. We have Christian Slater, who plays Pips.
Pips.
Robin Williams plays Batty. Tim Curry, the freaking king, right? Like the king, Tim Curry, Frankenfurter, Clue, right? Like
Yeah.
playing Hexus, the villain, right?
What a name too,
Getting
Hexus.
Hexus, right? You have Jonathan Ward who played Zach. And then also, I think Alejandro, you pointed it out, Cheech and Chong played Stump and Rue,
Yeah.
which like a lot of people don't know that unless you look up like this cast, right? I feel like I feel like the cast itself did a really good job at voiceover, right? I feel like for one thing, Batty's character obviously is the comedic, the comic relief of the whole film. But also it was a very Robin Williams-esque. I feel like this character fit him to a T. There were some points when I was a child that I laughed at, and I still laugh at, even though it was an adult joke, and now I get that adult joke. Like when he says, uh, humans don't have feelings; they're numb from the head down. One of the funniest jokes I've ever heard.
No,
And then he goes,
joke.
"Yeah," and then he talks about humans wearing baggy clothes and walking around going, "Hi, Helen." Dead. I was dead. I'm like, that is just some comedic gold, right? And then when when you flick his little antenna, he turns into, because he was experimented on, right? It's a bat. Just amazing. What did we all think about the cast? Alex, let's start with you.
Oh God, I think you guys mentioned this before. I mean, you got Tim Curry and Robin Williams, and we weren't ready for that. Like both of them the same era. I mean, you have two comedic geniuses. I mean, comedic timings there ridiculously well. Like so I was a little delayed more along the lines of realizing that Cheech and Chong were a part of the cast. But the main thing for me, I guess, what my main takeaway and what really got me into this was the skill of them and their voiceovers. You felt like you were in that world. Like you just felt like looking at this, looking at Fern Gully. I couldn't think about what was going on in the outside world at that time being. Just the
Yeah,
ability of
right.
they're great with the storytelling, the comedic genius, and like I said, timing wise and so forth. But the fact that you had that combined with creepy, ridiculously well storytelling abilities of Tim Curry himself, I I'm going to be bragging about this the whole time. Like I'm going to stop at this point. So I would say, in regards for the acting, who they were, I don't see this film being the same without them. So I will say that if we're going to specifically speak about this acting, you can't have these characters without him. Batty wouldn't be Batty without Robin Williams. I could try to
Sure.
think of something with replace Hexus, but just the fact that
Mm-mm.
I don't Tim Curry. Who could outdo Tim Curry in that? Don't get me wrong. You could have some people that could be this character, but once again, I think the acting was fantastic in this.
Yeah, yeah. And Kurt, what did you think of just the voice actors and the character portrayals in general?
Uh, it was I'll say mostly good. I might and shout out to Tone Loc, as Goanna as the lizard. Um,
Yes.
Sorry. Wait, what kind of lizard is he, Kurt?
what's that?
What kind of
Well,
lizard is he?
well, his name's Goanna, so I assume he's a monitor lizard, like a big
Okay.
Komodo dragon
Cool,
style.
cool.
Although it kind of looks vaguely, so, well, we can talk about that later. But some of the
Yeah,
art
cool.
is vaguely, you know. But my biggest complaint, and this is going to be going against the grain here, is Robin Williams' performance fell a little flat for me. So as somebody who grew up with a lot of Robin Williams movies, you've got that level where he gets like super funny, and there's a level where he can be super annoying when he's just going off doing his own thing and he doesn't have that reel in. And compare this to a performance that's almost identical, the genie from Aladdin, right? Like I'm not a big Disney guy, but I've seen the Aladdin,
Mm-hmm.
and his performance as the genie felt a little bit more natural and fluid and funny, whereas this felt a little bit more like maybe he was just going off and riffing and kind of saying whatever, and they didn't say, well, let's get back on the track. And some of the, like, there's a John Wayne reference, which a lot of little kids are not gonna know who John Wayne was.
I did not.
And that rap at the time, I'm sure when I was a kid I thought it was cool, but now it's just so cringeworthy that but yeah, I mean overall though it's obviously a stellar cast.
Sure.
The weakest link for me would be probably Christian Slater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just not, I mean, he's a good actor, but he's not a great voice actor.
Yeah. So I will say Aladdin came out the same year because I just looked it up. So Aladdin came out in 92 and then Fern Gully came out in 92. So I'm wondering if this was like Robin Williams' way of being like, well, fuck Disney, I'm going to do what the fuck I want to do, right? And like just do this whole different character. I think, so Alejandro, to your point, you're right. They could have probably gotten somebody different to play Hexus. However, So keep in mind that Rocky Horror came out in 75, right? And so that was like Tim Curry show, this is what it is. I think the way that they designed Hexus, because to be fair, Hexus was a little sexy. Like when he's singing poise up, you know, wilted brown, and very feminine like features, and then the way that the head and just everything, it's just the jaw and everything. I think it fit Tim Curry to the T, and I don't feel like people would have gotten that essence if it was played by some other person. You know, let's say, you know, in another somebody from England, right, or somebody with an accent, right, who could have maybe done that a little bit differently. Because you know, you look at it, but then you're like, oh, he's the villain, and then he can become really evil when you want to. But there's still some of this like weird in between of this gender fluidity with like the way that Hexus acts, and it's because he's literally the embodiment of pollution, which is what we were actually just discussing before, where pollution is just like this smoke, this you know, pestilence, this festering of like goop, right? But it almost flows like water, right? And water can be a sexy sort of, you know, way to do that. And so I do feel like Tim Curry, I don't feel like there was another option. I feel like Tim Curry was like, we got him, this is what we had, this is what he is. And then I'm wondering if they designed maybe it around some of his voice, you know, some of like what was going on and how he's saying. So
the design itself, another, I will gladly admit I've seen like no Disney animated movies. It's not like I hate Disney. I just didn't grow up with Disney, so I, you know, most of them I've seen later, except for Aladdin. But Fantasia's one I've seen at least clips of, and it had very is it Satan, Lucifer? I don't know.
Chernabog.
Yes, yes. It had the animation style and kind of feel felt very much like, I'm sure they were influenced by that, you know, because they would have been the generation that grew up with that. So
I'm so glad you said Chernabog because he's my favorite. No, he's absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, so he's the Disney version of Satan. That's what Chernabog was. But the Chernabog also is a mythical character. Anyway, so going back to Fern Gully, what did we? Okay, oh my God, there's just so much to unpack. What did we think about the story overall? And this is where I think I'm going to ask Kurt first because I really want to get sort of in detail about, because this was of its day. This was the environmental justice like piece, right, in '92, because you did have like Discovery Channel, you did have the things that you saw in like in classes, right, where it was just like, you know, nature now and this is what it's for. But I feel like this was an actual like pop culture movie where it was like, no, like you need to care about the rainforest, right? And like, let's talk about how it's set in Australia, and none of the characters had Australian accents. So can we talk about that? But also, I just want to also talk about the story in general. Kurt, what did you think? How did you feel about the story overall? I'm really interested to get your opinion.
Going in, it felt mixed messaging is the best way I can describe it. You know, it's a kids movie, but just because it's a kids movie with a simple story doesn't mean it has to be weak. You know, the story doesn't have to be weak, doesn't have to be stupid, none of that. No, there's plenty of great kids movies with very simple stories that are fantastic. But to me, the mixed messaging, I guess, starts with like that opening beautiful animation sequence where it looks like Aboriginal art. You know, it's very Aboriginal art, and then immediately it's just a bunch of white people in Australia. Yeah, you could have done something great there with, you know, not overtly, but like the idea of colonization and the Aboriginal people of Australia. It had more than, I guess, one black person in the cast, Toad Loke. You know, no Australian, no Aboriginal people. It's and that's a whole other conversation. But as far as the story goes, it's the mixed messaging, I guess, is twofold for me. So if you're a kid and you want to do this environmental story, the messaging is that people who destroy the rainforest are bad, right? And creatures and the things that live in the rainforest are important, planet's important. But then Hexus is an evil demonic force. That's the real bad guy, not people chopping down trees. So that kind of screws it up a little bit. And then, not that you can't do this properly, but who I'm sure you've probably seen or heard of The Secret of Nim, right?
Yes.
That's one of producer's favorite films.
Yes. So, you know, that deals with some animal testing in a very, I guess, overt way, but not like a in-your-face kind of way.
Yeah.
Whereas Fern Gully does, but bats are generally not tested on that way, ever. And then there's a whole issue with the bat, which I'll get into at some point. But include the animal testing when you had Plague Dogs or these other movies that dealt with animal testing. It's like just another confusing mixed messaging to me for like if you want little kids and you want to be like save the environment, don't chop down trees. You want to make the bad guys people. And if you really want to go, if I was doing this, you want to go deep, you make the bad guys white colonialists, right? Like,
sure.
And you don't have to be overt about it, but you could, do some subtle with maybe the fairies are all mixed races or something living in harmony, and here's the evil. But it's just, that mixed messaging to me just kind of fell flat. The overall story's fine, friendship and love, and really the love story felt too quick, which is a very Disney thing, where every Disney movie, right, they see each other and they're in love.
Little Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, like in a real world, that happens sometimes, right? But in the real world, in real good movies, you want that little bit of, not like immediate, like, oh, this person's hot. This person's the person for me. Maybe they grow and they build a friendship, and then towards the end, then there's love, instead of just like, man, I gotta hook up with this fairy person that's this tall in real life. But
mixed racing, mixed species.
Yeah, overall, it's a fine basic story. I just thought some of the mixed messaging and some of the a little too simplified as far as the relationships go.
Sure, that was great. I needed that perspective. Alex, what did you think of the story?
Man,
as an outsider. No, not really. But you know what I mean? Like, as somebody who was like,
100%. So, well, basically, it's funny you should say that, because that was one thing I was a little confused on too as well. Because when I was first I saw this kid, I had no idea where this was. Like, I was like, at the same time being, I was like, where do they sound like standard, English like me? And there's a rainforest. Where does that exist? At the time being, just confused as a kid. However, I will say the storyline has, like I said, has its pros and cons. Kurt brought some excellent points. So if we're going to talk about in regards to, let's say, properly delivering a message or properly taking a idea and trying to get it out there, I 100% agree. They should have went all the way. But we are also kind of familiar with the 90s and how we turned our back to certain things as long as the majority of this other stuff was, hitting home, which was not exactly the greatest thing. However, a big thing to me is the moral justification of the lead characters, of where they start them from. You're looking at this carefree two young individuals that are in a soul-searching form of their life, and both of them are rebellious in a sense, right? And one goes in a way of going against her, classic, people, and then the other goes against his classic people. And to me, I was like, Pocahontas. So it was interesting because, when I looked at this, and as a kid, I was starting to pull things left and right from it, and I was like starting to sound familiar to me. However, I still enjoyed it. And the reason why I enjoyed it so much is because this was from an era where Sonic the Hedgehog would come out and have friends die in the 90s. Felix the Cat would have headhunters coming after him, and like all these crazy little inserts and test factories and really risque animations were coming up, and to me, Fern Gully became one of them. And in that ability to take the 90s modern era and add a little rock pop to it, and justify the fact that yes, we are human beings, and yes, we go through mechanical eras, but we're also possible of learning. And the funny thing is as much I enjoyed the story originally, damn it, Kurt, why'd you have to say? Because now every time I say something, I'm like, this is great. But they missed this part. But here's the thing. All that being said and done, if I was to go ahead and judge the storyline strictly on, let's say, taking a character and pulling through a moral compass or trail, trying to find the end goal of actually having the ultimate good person, human being, I do enjoy the story for that. Could they do and change a few things to it? Yeah, like I said, and we come into the thing. One thing I couldn't get over as a kid is the fact that how Hexus had a physical body and kept on getting bigger and bigger, and skull and all the skeleton structure, and it confused the crap out of me because I was like, wasn't Hexus just literally smoke? I don't understand. And all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute.
Like a
No,
slime ball. He was a
yeah,
slime ball.
exactly. Because I was about to say, when I initially thought that, because when I was a kid, I'll be honest, I was confused by the smokestack in the distance. I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's not Hex. He's actually been in the tree the whole time. So I digress. Anyway, for the most part, I really do enjoy the film, the storyline. To me, it takes the two characters, puts them in a moral position, and I think it does well in showing their development process as a character. Um,
Mhm.
Kurt brings an excellent point, though. Now I think about it, and now I can't get it in my head. The way they deliver it at the home at the end. Now I think about it, I don't like it as much. But for the most part, I'd say about 90% of the storyline I'm good with.
Yeah. So I'm going to come at it from a different angle, which might also confuse you just 10 times more. So as a kid, Kurt, I 100% agree that like there's confusion. Like for me, at least as an adult, like if I were to see this, if it was my first time, I'd be like, well, so there's no hexes in the world. So why am I? But as a kid, for me at least, Hexus wouldn't have gotten released if it wasn't for humans. And Hexus was a byproduct of human intervention in chopping down a rainforest. So in my head, I'm like, oh, the two dudes fucking driving that bulldozer, like cutting down trees, was the enemy, right? Hexus was just a byproduct. And so the fairies had to deal with Hexus, right? Um, in a way where it was like, oh, great. Now, if he kills us all, he's going to kill the world, right? Like it was so for me, the Hexus concept was more of a this is what happens when you destroy rainforests, right? Just simplistically for me. And so my vision now, where it was like you brought that up, and I'm like, oh, absolutely. If I watched this as an adult, I'd be like, there is no Hexus. So what is the journey? What's the end game, right? Um, and then I think for me, the story itself, um, and then we can also talk about the music because the music I think makes this entire movie. How you have like artists like Raffi, right? Like I used to fall asleep listening to Raffi, right? Like you have artists. I forgot who's Tina. No, I forgot her name. The one that sang the love ballad when they were in the ocean, and then or in the ocean in the cave. And then you have Zach's tape recorder playing music that we sort of knew but didn't really know. But then you have original scores and original things like Robin Williams singing for Batty, and then the lizard singing that song about him wanting to eat everything. You have Tim Curry. Huh?
Tina Easton.
Sheena Easton, thank you. That was her name. And then you have people like Robin Williams who is doing a rap, right? Like, and it was just, I just feel like, you know, I feel like the story, you're right. There was a multiple issues going on, right? So you have the issue of Hexus and the fairies, right? And how Krista's supposed to be the next upcoming um Madge, is that her name? Maggie, the elder, basically.
Yes.
Um, and basically she sacrifices herself, right? And basically Chris has to take up the mantle. So you have that going on, right? Then you have the whole Zach storyline going on, right? Where he's just like a young kid coming in, doesn't know that he's destroying forest. Then you have their love story going on, right? But then you also have Batty going on, and then you have people trying to fit. So you have all these multiple like storylines coming together. So it made it confusing, I think, for me, like a little bit, where I was just like, okay, well, what's going on? Like, I don't understand like how this is. How is there a bat just like that fell out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden interacts with like fairies of the wood, but then also there's a human, and it was really weird to me, when I was a kid. But I think the story sort of flowed in a way where it's still centered around it was Hexus, and there was a way that he was up and coming, and like you said, it was sort of like it was a younger teen angst movie for that generation, right? It was like that. So so I think the story itself, while it could have used work, I think it portrayed the message, at least for me, in a way where it was understandable, it was digestible as like a 4 or 5 year old, right? Like, and it wasn't it, you're right, there's certain problematic things in it, but it wasn't like, I don't it just wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't as explicit as as a kid, where I was like, oh, something's wrong there, right? It was more of like, oh, cool, this is sort of acceptable for what it is. There's problems, but also what was going on. So what did you all think about the music? I'm just interested, like, what, like, did you think that putting in this like general like music that people know and agree to was cool? Did you think it was stupid? What did you all think? We'll start with Alex.
Honestly, I'm gonna be honest with it. When it comes to listening, knowing, I would say certain artists and music, I fall flat. However, I have a habit of memorizing just the songs that come out and audio and so forth. As a kid, I found it fun. I found a lot of these enjoyable, as you mentioned before. Even though Robin Williams was doing a little solo stuff here and there, and to me, how modern it was and how modern the I would say animation was, or the art per se, it meshed really well. It meshed really well, so I believe it actually complemented a lot. And to me, it actually improved the storyline here and there. But when it comes to storytelling, I'm a sucker for any kind of additional backup audio, whether it could be just simple sounds or the FX concepts of it. But I do believe the soundtrack complemented it more than anything.
Sure. Kurt, what did you think?
It's tough because I love musicals, right? So one of my favorite movies ever is Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which is a musical. However, usually like the Disney style music is not like the Elton John songs in this is not really what I would. It was all fine, and it wasn't distracting. It just all felt a very like a little Disney light for the most part. Although the one song which I'm not going to remember there's like a couple of like pop songs that are kind of strewn about. One of them is Dance of a Thousand Lands, Land of a Thousand, whatever. There's a semi-famous song in there that was kind of fun. And they got some actual like musical talent to sing. Alan Silvestri, right? Who's a famous composer, was involved. He did a lot of the movies of our childhoods.
Yes, he did.
So it was all not bad. It just wasn't like the peaks of some of the like best animated movie music, but it wasn't also bad. It was not terrible.
Yeah.
Except I thought the rap was a little like, as an adult, like listen to that rap, you're like, no, don't do that. But as a kid, it was fun. So
you don't think that's like a science teacher rap though, Kurt?
I can see maybe.
Okay, that was dumb. You get the point.
I think adding in a little bit of like pop culture music and music that we kind of already knew and loved was kind of like a good sort of addition to this movie. But I do like the original scores. I do like the original things that they did with it. I thought it was creative, and you're right. It did because when you were this young, right? You did know, but you didn't know what was like really Disney. Who was doing this? Was it Fox, right? Who was it? Was it 20th Century? And so back then I was just like, oh, this is how cartoons are now, right? Like they're musicals. This is the music that they put in here. And it did not have the Disney feel at all. But you still got a little bit of a sense of like, oh, this is a little bit of a breather compared to Disney, right? Because I was obsessed with Disney as a kid, where it was like original score, original soundtrack, all that stuff, right? Like Aladdin, all that stuff. But then you see this and you're like, oh, this is music that I know. Like, this is actually kind of cool, right? And I know they did that with, I think, like I said, Quest for Camelot. I don't know if that was 20th Century, but they did it with that. But Thumbelina and even Anastasia, it was all original music, right? But, and so 20th Century was doing some very interesting things. Kurt, I know you wanted to discuss the bat. What about the bat? What's going on with the bat? And we're not talking about Robert Pattinson right now.
If I had a dry erase board, right, I would write Hollywood does not understand bats at all. So I'm gonna back up a little bit and why this hit home. So if you haven't seen Morbius and you want to see Morbius for some reason, cover your ears for a couple seconds. So this isn't a big
spoilers, so cover your ears.
I won't spoil anything, right? Because this was in the trailer. So if you've seen the Morbius trailer, Morbius goes to a cave and bats come out of this cave. In the Morbius universe, they're vampire bats. Do I have a good okay, so in real life, a vampire bat is like the size of this Skeletor, right? They're tiny. Real life, most bats that are insectivores. So there's two groups of bats. There's insectivores, and then there's like fruit-eating bats. And there's like vampire bats, which are kind of like the insectivore carnivorous bats. And there's a few other bats that like pollinate flowers and do some other stuff. And there's some bats that eat like small birds and things. But for the most part, you've got little bats like this that are like vampire bats or they eat insects. And then if you have fruit bats, for the most part, they are big. If you've been to For local people, San Diego Zoo, they have the fruit bats there, and they're big. The flying foxes,
Those are huge.
they are the size of a bird. They're, you know, they have, some of them have like 6-foot wingspans. They're still pretty small, but they have these big wingspans.
Dang.
So Morbius, these little tiny vampire bats, which in reality, a vampire bat sneaks up on a sleeping animal, bites it like most animals do. They don't want the thing to wake up and know it's being bitten, sucks blood, and then crawls away and flies off, right? In the Morbius movie, they somehow, the vampire bats act like piranhas and like tear things apart. And they somehow picked a cow up and carried it up a cliff and then tore it apart. So Hollywood doesn't understand bats. So then this is the second movie now I've watched kind of in a row-ish, where I'm watching this movie and I'm like, my science brain just kind of breaks, right? So bats are not blind. They're not. I mean, there could be some blind bats in general, because, you know, some bats probably have bad eyesight. But they don't see like as well as we do in the day, for the most part, except for fruit bats. Fruit bats are active mostly during the day or the evening or morning, so that because they're going after fruit, right? And you have to know what fruit is ripe, what fruit is healthy for you. So you have to be able to see fruit. So Robin Williams makes a couple of jokes. They're like blind as a bats, but fruit bats can see very well, right? They can see at least as well as like a dog or a cat. So that's like the first. But then the second issue, my science brain is thinking about it. So they're riding on like beetles. So they should be like hanging out with a bat that's this tall, right? They should be like this tall, those little fairies.
Yeah.
Exactly. But a fruit bat, most fruit bats, especially the Australian fruit bats, when you think of a fruit bat, it's gonna be the size of like a house cat with big wings, right?
Oh my gosh.
He should tower and fruit. So he's supposed to be like a fruit bat, right? So he should be like, they should be this big, and he should be like the size of my head, right? A much larger with like a 6-foot, 4-foot wingspan. And it's just for a movie that tries to be very environmental, it's like these little things that just kind of mess with you. And maybe he's not supposed to be a fruit bat. Maybe he's supposed to, but he's clearly a fruit bat, because those are the big, you know, active. That's what it looks like. The flying foxes, the famous ones in Australia that go to, you know, hang out in people's yards. And that's like the basic level I ask. If you're making a movie in Hollywood, any movie, spend 3 minutes on Google to see whatever animal in your movie to try to make it fit. And then I will say though, like, it's weird too, like baddies less stylized than some of the other animals, right? They like the goanna is more like very stylized, kind of like I mean, they look sort of like living Aboriginal art. Like the goanna, the cassowaries, the birds, the big flightless birds.
I think the frogs too. The frogs as well.
Yeah, frogs.
By the
And
way,
it's
Kurt,
less
you're having some
stylized.
people cheer on that little Skeletor tease that you did for the explanation earlier, you know? So just to let you know.
I have a man bat toy, but it's too far away to grab, or I would use the actual bat. But yeah, that's like my pet peeve in movies, where something very crucial, and it's a kid's movie, I get it, but if you're trying to be very environmental, you think you would at least know that fruit bats have good vision, right? Or even if it's, you don't worry about the size, because like whatever, it was like 80s, 90s, who cares? You know, Megatron could turn into a handgun.
Yeah.
But like, you know, at least know that fruit bats can see pretty well, eat fruit. Or if it's an insectivorous bat, know what they look like. They don't look the same. You know, basic science that falls apart, and you're trying to do a pro-environmental movie about. And actually, I don't think they specifically ever say Australia, right? But
They don't, but it is. It's based.
everything is Australia. So I think it's supposed to be kind of a mythical non-Australia, but it's clearly Australia with the Aboriginal art and the cassowaries and the goanna. But
Yeah.
no, I would rant a little bit more too, but I don't remember if Tone Loc's character has a forked tongue or not. But it should have had.
He
Okay.
did.
Then we're okay then.
Because
Okay.
I specifically remember that because when he wraps his tongue around Zach, it's forked.
Okay. Perfect.
Because I always was like, oh, it's like, you know, it got like, so yeah, it is.
The monitor lizards and snakes have forked tongues. So.
Nice.
Oh.
I love that. I kind of feel like we need to have a movie night with Kurt where we watch nothing but like animal movies. Like, I want to know your take on Zootopia. Like, I really do. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
That's a movie I've seen. I like Zootopia, but we could talk about that later.
like, or like, I would love to watch. We're gonna get into like, I would love to watch like another environmental movie, like, right, like where Kurt's just there and it's like, Or like, it can be like Science Theater 3000, right? Where we're all just sitting there and Kurt's just like talking
People
shit
are
about the
saying,
whole movie.
yes, movie science night with Kurt.
Yes, that'd be so cool. So Alex, what did you think about? Okay, let's talk about the bat. What did you think about Batty? Like, did you think
Oh Jesus
what was
Christ!
going on?
So if we're gonna get technical about like anything, honestly, the movie attracted me with him. Which is funny you should mention it, Kurt, because like I've had some interactions with fruit bats, and they're like puppies with wings, and some of them get pretty big, and it's kind of
Oh.
scary. They can like wrap around your shoulders, and he looks like a little mini backpack with leather around your back. But that being said, Batty to me was attractive because of Robin Williams. I will say that Robin Williams' voice was a voice of comfort. And
There he is.
whoa, oh yes, from the was it Batman the animated series, right?
Yeah, this is the one from the whatever the little kids, like the young kids toys are called. I don't know what
Yeah,
they're called, but
yeah, the happy, yeah.
yeah.
Oh man, I won't even touch base, but let's just say that I got like a whole corner dedicated to the figurines. I love them. Um, but Batty, yeah, I'm telling you, it was, and I really do think it was mainly Robin Williams' voice that attached him to it, because it was hard for me to see another character as another character without his face. Um, in regards to who he was as an individual, I figured, to me, Batty was alternative. He was different. He was somebody that was suffering from the system, and now he's like, I'm out of it. Let me go ahead and do some things. Which, at first, wait, now that I remember, as a kid, I got frustrated with Batty because I thought he was trying to prevent everybody else from actually progressing, and I thought Batty was scared a lot as a kid. Wow, it's crazy how this is coming back. So as much as I really like Batty because I liked him as a character, I kept on getting pissed off with him because he kept on like trying to prevent things to discover, and I always felt like he was a hindrance to some extent. However, I liked him because his comedic relief, but I also noticed I always got really annoyed about him because I figured he was as a kid I thought he was too chicken. Now I think about it. Um, but because yeah, now I think my favorite characters, which we'll go into, is Cheech and Kong's characters, but we'll go into that later. But in regards to the Batty as an individual, I would say the likeness, the warmth I had to him was because of Robin Williams' voice and who he was as characters, and going to Genie and
Mhm.
other further things, and a lot of the live action films he was doing at that time being, he was always associated with somebody that was goofy, warm, and unusual. And I saw Batty the same way. The only thing that bugged me was how much he tried to stop certain things from happening at times being, and I thought he was too worrisome. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely agree with the fact that, this was a really good, I don't want to say cameo, but a good character for Robin Williams to play. I also, if we want to go really deep into it, I feel like that was the personification of animal testing. And Kurt, you're right. Like, if we want to get literal, like clearly bats aren't like they're not experimented on like that, right? We can talk about rats, we can talk about monkeys, all that other stuff. But I feel like this was the personification of animal testing in that world. But also the fact that like he still relived the trauma when his wires crossed, right? And had to sort of overcome all of that, which was comedic at first, and then after a while you're like, oh, this dude's like really, like this bat's really messed up, and like has to depend on Krista, and has to depend on Zach and all that stuff. But then eventually ends up being part of the solution, right? It ends up flying. It was Zach up to Hexus, and like all the things into the machine so he could stop it, and all that stuff. And so I don't know. I feel like it was a good comedic relief character. Um, okay, favorite characters. I for sure got to say Hexus for sure. Bottom line, cut and dry. Tim Curry can do no wrong. He was absolutely fabulous in this. Even when he got big and when he was like killing I was like, oh, this dude's like, he's great. And then just his music and everything, and how he didn't necessarily, he influenced from the shadows. There wasn't never any direct influence into people, right? Except for when he's talked to Tony and the guy that also was running the machine, and he was like, no brakes, and they're like, no brakes. And so I will say he's probably my favorite character. And then Alex, you were saying that your favorite characters were Cheech and Chong's characters.
Yeah. So let me see something here,
It's
because evidently,
Root
Definitely.
and
can you
Can you
hear
hear
me
me
a
a
little
little better?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
better? Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna try to try this right here. If it gets a little affected, I'm sorry, guys. But for me, it was Stump and Root. Ironically, when I was a kid, though, I related a lot to Pip. Pip came out, and I was like, he's the one that knows what's going on. And as it first came out, I was like, you know, he had a little cockiness to him, but I thought as a kid, like, he would have cockiness. He knows everybody there. Like, why wouldn't everybody listen to him? But the reason why Stump and Root became my favorite character was because of him. They started bossing, you know, how they always bossed him around so much. And can you guys hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So how they bossed him around so much, and after a while, their little antics. And I love the fact that they were like, I didn't know it at the time being, but they're little MC guys on Beatles. Like, how cool is that?
Yep.
I mean, I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. I mean, the armored Beatles were just so great because as a kid, we lived on base, so we had a lot of experiences with like Japanese Beatles, a lot of horn Beatles and stuff. So I was very familiar how hard and scaly they were. So to see like, you know, them ride these things and fly around all, you know, all awesome and badass, like, was really cool to me. I will say this though, watching it last night, and even though I was looking at things and reminiscing and having a lot of nostalgia, I started realizing how much I like Texas, and I was like, wasn't expecting that. But then again, it's Tim Curry how he does it. But once again, I will pedal back. I definitely have to say Stump and Root are my main two, just because of the comedic relief, who they are. You just hear the voices behind them, fantastic, and I just love the fact that they ride Beatles. I love it, love it.
So great. All right, Kurt, what was your favorite non-scientific character in this movie?
I'm gonna shout out to two. So my favorite, I guess, minor character was Tone Loc Goanna. I like the design; it's fun. I love big lizards, so you gotta support the big lizard. But I guess I'm gonna have to go Krista.
Okay.
She's kind of like the punk rock Tinkerbell in a way, like a little more edgy, little like not sexier, but like a little bit more, I guess, that sophisticated, like strong woman kind of thing. So you know, I'll give it to her. You know, she's a good lead.
Like that.
Yeah, and
she
that's
was
actually
cute.
I was just gonna say, and it's a good point that you make. Like, this was a female lead, right? Like, most of these like movies that came out by 20th Century Fox were all female led. But this was a female lead, right? And she had a very strong female influence and was doing all that. And you know, so that's actually something important to point out, I feel, whenever we as men need to uplift and empower, you know, women when we can. I feel like this was just a really good. I feel like this was just a really good movie for, you know, female lead. And yeah, like, you could say, oh, she was a fairy, but like, to be fair, like, she had this whole experience and journey throughout the whole thing where she became she became the head bitch, right? Like, that was her. Shouldn't say that word, but she became the boss, right? Like, she became the person that, because I hate using that word. She became like the person that was, you know, she became who Maggie was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of grew into that. I won't even get into Fern Gully too, because that was a travesty. But yeah, we're not going to talk about that. Okay, so I know I said this earlier, and I know we only got like a couple minutes left. Is Avatar the modern version of Fern Gully? Go.
Oh, Kurt, do you want to touch base on this first, or?
There's several movies that have kind of the same theme. There was an animated movie that came out, CGI, like, animated terrible movie a few years ago. You know, Dances with Wolves.
Oh, there we go.
You know, there's a lot of movies that have the theme, environmental theme, and then they combine it with that, like, you know, the native peoples, and then like the white man is like somehow involved in saving the day. It's a story as old as colonialism, I guess, you know. But yeah,
yeah.
Same movie, except for Hexus is replaced with that evil general guy with the knife.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. With the scar across his eye.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Alex.
Oh no, I was just said the same thing. It's kind of crazy because it's more along the lines of attachments you're trying to figure out. I will say Avatar is probably the best comparison now in regards to something that was on a massive scale for people to view, and in regards to storyline. Kurt, Dances with Wolves, excellent comparison. I did not see that coming at all. In that regard, that is very, very accurate, and almost like the timing of it's ironic because they're both around the same release date in the 90s. Man, I'm trying to think if there's any other film that would be comparable right now.
I mean, you did say like loosely, like Pocahontas, right? Like the whole.
Yeah, because like I said, it was a Pocahontas thing that dawned on me right when we were going back and forth with it, and Kurt hit the nail on the head. It always seems to bring in the whole classic, white male savior complex.
Yeah.
But the good thing about this, I know you didn't exactly ask me this, but it I guess what saves it for me though is the fact that let me double check here. I want to make sure is the fact that you are looking at Krista being who she is, because yes, I will say, because before I digress more, because Avatar, yeah, I do think there is a strong female character, but in my opinion, Avatar, the story and the basis of premise of who she is and how she's trying to figure herself out is a little different from Krista being a little more rebellious and actually coming out there and wanting to see the new world. So I would say that if we're really comparing apples to apples, the save natural resources and not treat Mother Nature like crap message is definitely there still. I would say that Krista has a little bit more of everything. Oh, sorry. I would say though, Krista has more of a noticeable, I would say, hero development. Because I don't think she looks to be the hero. I think she just looks to save the people around her. And I just, once again, I'm sorry to digress a little bit and pedal back to what you were stating, being a really ridiculously great character. And I think that note makes Avatar and Fern Gully kind of not exactly meet on that delivery point of a female protagonist.
Sure. Yeah. I do feel like you're right. It was like that whole step up to the plate when you need to, even though, she was sort of not in training, right? But she was just sort of like I'm going to do what I want to do. This is how it is. Like, I'm a rebel, people are going to do this, but then also came and stepped up to the plate when she needed to save her community and to save that whole entire forest. And then she did it, and that's spoiler alert to anybody. She did it and killed off Hexus and ended up turning in Hexus turned into a tree and all that stuff, and it was just really good. And so I mean, I love this movie. I don't know if we changed your mind, Alex, on it. I thought it was just really great.
No, dude, oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. The only thing I wanted to mention here before that, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, my friend. But they were mentioning earlier in here, for example, Boba Fett mentions, "Hey, I hear Pocahontas is more. I hear more Pocahontas compared to Avatar." A lot of people also are saying, don't forget around that time, Young Guns 2 was out as well, in reference to just the style and day and age of delivery and so forth as well. So I didn't want to interrupt you there. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure I got the comments there.
No, I think that's important too. I think, to my point earlier, I feel like this was a product of its time, right? I feel like a lot of stuff, like we were saying, like that they got away with, they couldn't really get away with today. And for sure, I feel like there would be a whole difference in cast and animation. And because one of the things I did mention too was like sometimes part of the scenes, like you can almost look, and Krista's like almost black or like like an indigenous skin color or a darker skin tone, and then she's standing next to Zach and she's like alabaster white, and you're like, where was the animation going with that, right? And you're like, this isn't
Aladdin disease, right? Aladdin disease, where Aladdin was like dark skinned and then he became rich and got light skinned.
Oh, why'd you have to bring the accuracy?
Wait, that is facts. That is
when he became the
facts.
Yeah.
Oh, that's insane. Well, we're getting closer to the end. Are there any last minute things you all want to add about Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, made in 1992?
I would just say, as much as I said, it's a 2 out of 5 and it doesn't hold up, this to me is like the perfect example of something where you could modernize it with kind of modern sensibilities and make it better rather than just ruin a classic. The sense where, if it were me, same basic story, maybe make Hexus more of a boogeyman that turns out to not be real, and the real enemies are just bad people.
Nice.
Make the fairies not all white people, make them like dark skinned or just a group of mixed people. And I would also twist to the true hero in the sense that, I would make Zach kind of more like a romantic interest, but like the teacher character. where he teaches them, hey, this is the world of man. This is how we stop this thing. Which works at the end. But that, that would be, like the modern update that I could see going over really well. Some cool CG, and some great voice acting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I love that. Alex, any last thoughts?
I'll be honest with you. I'm gonna have to keep it at a 4. Like I said, it at times, like I thought I was gonna go a little higher. I do believe the message does change my rating a little bit more for it. But honestly, I still have nostalgia. I still appreciate it for what it is. But I'd probably have to still cut it a 4. I actually like to see this redone. Not gonna lie, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, are we doing screenplay, guys? Let's do it. Let's get some people of color in here, and let's just friggin' redo it. I feel like this definitely could have been could be redone with more. I would say sort of like what you were saying, Kurt, right? Like, let's add these elements in there. Let's keep these. Let's take some. Let's adjust this. Let's make baddie like either a vampire bat or something that's a little bit more relevant. And not experimented on. Maybe we can get all that stuff. So possibly live action. Who knows? Who knows in these day and age, right? Who knows?
For sure.
But I think this is definitely a movie for the Bucks. I feel like this is definitely, like I said, a product of its time that needs to stay there, but also we can watch it and reminisce on it and say, gosh, remember this moment. And like my dad, not remember the entire thing when I would watch it all the time. He was like, I don't remember that part. And I was like, oh my God, Dad, we used to watch it all the time. All right, my friends, where can we see you at, Alex? Where can we see you on the socials? Everywhere else?
You can catch me on Instagram at IAMCOWIE. I am Cowie. Acting reels, project reels, you name it. I'm trying to keep myself as busy as much as possible in the entertainment world. So that's where you can catch me.
Nice. And Kurt, where can we catch you? What's going on with your little scientific life?
To quote Zach, my bodacious world. I had to throw the bodacious line. If you look up Kurt Broz, my name, I think that's my TikTok. I'm around places. I'm on Nerdbot stuff. I'm on that hashtag show stuff. And then WLFK Films on Instagram. Funny memes and videos of me in cosplay.
Nice. That's amazing. So as you all know, my name is Jordyn Orozco. You can find me on Instagram. It's City of Stars 13 on there. I don't post that much, but I'm probably going to start posting so people can actually be like, hey, what are you up to? But yes, absolutely. Well, basically, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We were talking about Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, an amazing movie, a non-scientific movie that needs to be updated. It's great. Go watch it if you haven't. Be sure to join our Discord to keep the conversation going. Shout out to Alex and Kurt. Thank you all so much for joining me. It was always a pleasure, Kurt. And thank you, Alex. We're doing one.
Yes!
Really great. Yes. So if you haven't known already, Nom Watch Review and Basic Binges are now in podcast form. If you miss our live streams, you don't have to worry about it. You can listen to it the next day on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or where you get your podcast from. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, as well as here on Twitch. All of our platforms are at Nom Talk Network. Thank you so much to our lovely and amazing producer, Stephanie. We love you. I love you. You're awesome. You do so much things, all the things, and you work, and you're a human, and you sleep, I hope. So we love you so much. Thank you, Steph. So tune into our next show, which is going to be tomorrow. It's going to be Basic Binges. They're going to be watching Moon Knight episode 2. Oh my gosh, if you haven't seen episode 1, go watch it. Amazing. Fabulous. Absolutely. Do it. So until then, I'm your host, Jordyn Orozco, and you all have a nomorific day. Bye, everyone.